Welcome back to part 12 of the Markidini crochet along. This week we will be working on the blocks beside where we worked last week and on top of 28 and 32. So we'll be working 45, 46, 47 and the 48 blocks. So block 45 will use an interesting mix of stitches. We have an increase that is made with the TSS yarn over TSS. We're going to be working some back post TSS and also a popcorn stitch. And then I'll show you these other stitches as we work those. So for block 45, working beside block 41 from last week, we will count over 30 loops, remembering not to count the border stitch in between the lines here. So count over 30 loops, mark that. We'll join in back, pick up our 30 loops in back across, making our connection loop for 32 loops on hook. Work the return pass plus another row of TSS to start block 45. So for row 3, we will work 7 TSS stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. Oh, there's a new marking on our chart as well. It's a blank square, but it's not white, it's colored in. It means we're going to skip that stitch before we work the next one. So we'll skip this next loop, and then in the next loop we're going to work an increase. So it's a TSS stitch plus a yarn over back into the same stitch for a TSS. So after our increase, we skip the next loop and work 10 TSS. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Skip the next loop and then work that increase in the next. So it's a TSS, yarn over, TSS in the same stitch. If you find that your stitch is stretching and making a large hole, you can try to work these as a knit stitch instead of the TSS for the increase. Skip the stitch after and 7 TSS. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. And then we'll make our connection and work a regular return pass. Then for row 4, we will be working those post stitches, so I'll help you when we get there. First we want to work 7 purl. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 purl stitches. Then we'll do a knit stitch, which should be that first stitch of that increase from last round. And then the post stitch, so we yarn over, so the post stitch, we're just going to work around this yarn over loop from last round. So you insert your hook in front of the stitch, you want to go around the back and out to the front, so you have both the front and the back loops are on your hook. Yarn over and pull that yarn through. So it's a simple stitch made as a back post. And then knit in this next stitch. And then 10 purl stitches. 1, 2, 3, 9, and 10 purl stitches, and we've reached those increase stitches again. So we'll do a knit stitch in the first one, the back post TSS, and knit stitch in the next. And our 7 purl stitches to finish off this row. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. Make our connection. Okay, now for the return pass, we need to work cables as well on this row. So I'm going to show all the cables in the return pass. If you wish, while you're picking up the loops for row 4, you can work them in the forward pass if you wish. It was easier for me to show the post stitches separately, and now I will add the cables in as we work the return pass. So we'll pull off 6 of those 7 purl stitches, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And then these next 2 stitches, the purl stitch and the knit stitch, will make our cable. So we'll pull those off, the knit falls to the front, we put the purl back on the hook, cross that knit working loop back on, and then pull that cable off in the return pass, as well as the next stitch. Then we'll work the next cable, pulling off those 2 loops, purl goes to the back, put the knit on the hook, cross the purl, working loop back on, and work this cable off. Then we'll take off the 9 of those 10, actually it'll be 8 more purl stitches to take off. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. Remove the next 2 loops, put the purl back on, cross the knit, and then work the return pass for that cable, as well as the next stitch. And then the final cable, we'll take off those 2 loops, put the knit back on, cross that purl, and then ready to work that return pass through those and take off our remaining stitches. Yarn was splitting, there we go. Great. So I've showed you how to work that back post stitch. The first one there was around that yarn over in the middle of the increase. For the next several post stitches, it will be working around the same stitch where we already worked the post stitch, or the previous row's post stitch. So it makes it a little bit easier the next few rows. So I'll show you row 5 yet. We're going to start with 6 purl stitches. Well, actually work 5 purl stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And then this next purl stitch, it'll be part of the cable. So we'll work the cable forward pass this time. So purl stitch and knit stitch. Remove those loops, the purl falls to the back, knit stitch back on the hook, cross the purl. Then we'll make a purl stitch in that crossed purl stitch from last row cable, and then TSS post stitch around the post stitch from last row, purl stitch in that next stitch, and then ready for our next cable. So we do a knit stitch and a purl stitch, take those off the hook, the knit falls to the front, purl goes back on, we cross the knit, and then we'll purl in those next 6 stitches, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Ready to work the next cable. Purl and a knit. Purl in the next, which could be slightly hidden. Back post TSS in the next, purl in the next. And work our last cable of this row, a knit and a purl, and cross those, and then purl in those last few stitches. Then you can make your connection and go ahead and work that return pass. Then I'll let you work row 6 and 7 following the chart, and I will join you back on row 8 to show you how we work those popcorns in this pattern. So I'm ready to work row 8 with you. Before I do, however, I just want to mention that I did go back and I changed those increases to using a knit stitch, as mine was pulling and leaving quite a large hole there, and I'm happier with this result. So you may want to do that if you have created a hole as well. So back for row 8, we start with the 4 purl stitches. And then where we had this knit stitch last time, we are going to work the popcorn stitch. So we work 5 double stitches in this stitch. So we yarn over, go under the loop, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2. We do that 4 more times. 2, 3, 4, and 5, and then we'll yarn over and pull through 5 loops to make that popcorn, or to close that popcorn together. And then we'll make purl stitches in the next 3. So I just sort of move that popcorn out of the way to find that first stitch. 1, 2, and 3, and then still working that back post TSS. And as you can see, those back posts are making a little bit of a ridge, or the stem for our flower, and purl in the next 3. And then ready for our next popcorn stitch. So yarn over, insert under the next loop, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2. That's twice. 3, 4, and 5. Yarn over, pull through all 5 loops, and then ready to continue down the row. The next one will be a purl stitch, and it might have stretched so I can barely find that stitch, so look carefully for that next stitch, and so on. So I'll let you continue to finish up this row and the rest of the chart. There are 12 rows for this block, so you can go ahead and finish that now, working the bind off row at the end. So after you finish block 45, you will join in back and picking up the 30 loops across, make the connection for 32 loops on your hook, and then work 2 more rows for this horizontal line. Then for block 46, you will join in back of the horizontal line, picking up those 30 loops as well, making the connection for 32 loops on your hook, and do the return pass. So that's your foundation row. So for this block, you can see how we're going to be making several cables. So one row, they'll all be left-leaning cables. The next row are all right-leaning cables to make this design here. So I'll help you with rows 2 and 3 to get started on this chart, and then you can finish that on your own. So you may wish to have your cable holder handy for this one, as we will be crossing 1 stitch over 3 stitches. And it'll be easier to control that cable with the stitch holder. So we'll make a knit stitch in the first stitch, and then in the next 4 stitches. So these next 4 knit stitches will be what we use to make the cable. So it's 3 and 4. So we'll take these 4 loops off the hook. The last one we took off, this first of the group of 4, will stay to the front. We'll put the other 3 loops back on our hook, and then cross that 1 knit stitch over in front like that. Then we will knit in the next 3. So you want to be careful. We've already used this loop here. You can see how my yarn is going through those loops. So I know I've used that loop. So we'll knit in 3. And then we'll knit in the next 4, and that will be our next cable. 2, 3, and 4. So the same thing, we'll take those 4 loops off, put that 1 loop on the holder, bring it to the front, put the other 3 loops back on our hook, cross this one and put it back on our hook. And then 3 more knit stitches. We'll knit the next 4 for the 3rd cable. Take those 4 loops off the hook. First one of the set of 4 will fall to the front. If I can get my hook, there we go. And put these other 3 back on. And cross that one to the front. 3 more knit stitches, 1, 2, 3. And then 1 last cable, so 4 knit stitches. Take those off the hook, put that one on the stitch holder, put the 3 back on, cross that one to finish that cable. And then we will knit in the last 4 stitches, 1, 2, 3, and 4, and make our connection. And then regular return pass. Take off that first one. You can add a chain 1 if you think it feels tight and needs a little bit more room to spread out. And take off those 3, knit. Take off that first loop, chain 1, finish the 3 of the cable, and then the 3 knit in between, and the last 2 stitches. Then for row 3, we'll be making the right leaning cables. So we will knit in the first 4 stitches. So that's the first stitch, and then the 3 are part of that first cable. And then that last stitch is the cross stitch of the cable. So that's our first of our new cable. 1, 2, 3, and 4. So this time we will take the 4 stitches off. The 3 will go on our stitch holder and go to the back. We put that front one back on and then cross those 3 behind for our right leaning cable. And then we'll have the 3 knit stitches, which are the 3 from that previous cable, and they'll be in between the cables this time. And then starting with that crossed one from last cable, we'll knit in it and the next 3 stitches. 1, 2, and 3. Remove those ones from the hook. Those 3 will go on the stitch holder. Oh, and I lost one. I just lost that one. I'll do that again. Put that 4th one back on and cross the 3. Now these next 2 I will show in the return pass, so you can keep working forward past cables. I will show these last 2 in the return pass. So we'll knit in the next 3. Then these next 4 that we knit will be the next cable, 3 and 4. Then we'll knit in 3, 1, 2, and 3, and then again these next 4 will be the last cable, 1, 2, 3, and 4, and then we'll knit in that last stitch and make our connection. There we go. And ready to begin our return pass. So for the return pass, I'll take off that first stitch, and now I'm going to work this cable in the return pass. So I will move those 4 from the hook. So these 3 we'll put on the cable holder, put to the back, put that first one back on, cross the 3, and put our working loop back on. And then we'll take the 3 off, 2, 3, and then chain 1 before that, before that crossed knit stitch, and then take it off. Take the next 3 off, 1, 2, 3, and I'm at the next cable. Take those 4 loops off. These 3 will go to the back. The first loop back on, cross them over, and put your working loop back on. So if you forget which way you're going, the red cables on the chart are leaning to the right and the left ones lean to the left. So that one or the blue cable marks will lean to the left. So that one stitch that we need to lean to the right will be the one we cross over. So take those 3 off, make the chain 1, and take the last cross stitch off with a cable stitch, the 3 in between, and then continue to work that return pass. 2, 3, chain 1, take the cable off. Okay, so you can decide whether the forward pass or the return pass works better for you. And you can work your way through the remaining parts of this chart for a total of 12 rows, and then work your bind off row at the end. When you've completed block 46 and done the bind off row, you want to come back down to beside block 45 and then count over from where we have our edge here. You want to count over 4 loops to join in back and pick up the loops over in front of the bind off row from that horizontal line to pick up our loops and work this vertical line. So you'll work it up the 12 rows of block 45, connect to the 3 rows of the horizontal line and the 12 rows of block 46. Do not bind off, but you can fasten off that vertical line. Then for block 47, we want to come back down and we will join on the far edge in back to pick up our 13 loops across, make the connection loop for 15 loops on our hook. Then you'll just follow the chart for block 47, working TKS, or the knit stitch, the simple stitch, and the reverse stitch. So you'll just follow the 27 rows of block 47 as per the chart. When that is finished, it will look something like this. You will have connected all the 27 rows of the vertical line. You'll work your bind off row as well across the top of block 47. For this horizontal line then, we'll pick up at the top of block 47 in the back, picking up the 13 loops across. We'll skip over the border loops and pick up the 4 loops of the vertical line, and then working across block 46 in behind, we'll pick up 30 more loops. So you should have a total of 49 loops on your hook when we have made the connection. And you'll work those 3 rows of TSS of the horizontal line and the bind off row as well. And then for block 48, our last block for this week, you will pick up behind the horizontal line and picking up those 47 loops across, connecting to the vertical line over here for 49 loops on your hook. There's 2 pages of charts for this block, so make sure that you're reading the correct chart, starting with row 1, so our pickup row, our foundation row, regular return pass. We're just going to be working these series of cables, going to the left, right, and continuing on through the block. In between the 2 sets of 3 cables are the reverse stitches, as you can see by green on the chart. Okay, so they're all familiar cables and stitches in this block, so I'm not going to work this one with you. You can, after you've made your foundation row, just follow the chart along. So the first page you will do 21 rows, and then the second page another 21 rows, ending on row 42. When you have completed the 42 rows, you will work the bind off row across the top, and that will finish part 12. And that's for the medium size blanket that I have shown you. If you are continuing on to make the large size blanket, you will have started block 47. You will have a vertical line. You will have a vertical line on this side of your blanket here, and you would have counted over 4 loops from the edge of that vertical line to work block 47. After you've completed block 47, you would join to this vertical line and work another vertical line up the side of block 47, and then continue across the top here to work this horizontal line. And then you would also continue from that vertical line edge over here, picking up the 4 loops and working an additional vertical line up the top of block 48 if you're continuing on to the large size blanket. However, you do not work the horizontal line across.